The following lessons will help you introduce the contest and prepare your students. Throughout these lessons, your students will interpret grade-level poems and have opportunities to read aloud poetry. It is valuable for students to understand and interpret the poem that they will eventually recite. Whether your students are learning about poetry in a specific unit, or you are already integrating poetry into many units, or you are just looking for ways to promote English, here you will find a summary of lessons that you can utilize. During these lessons, students will utilize the ESU Handbook to interpret grade-level poems and choose a poem to read aloud with pausing and tone to show an understanding of the poem's meaning. Lesson 1 begins with reading aloud poetry. Students can appreciate poetry by listening to its rhyme, rhythm, and overall sound. Within Lesson 1, as a teacher, you can decide to choose a poem for the class, or for small groups, or have students choose independently. When asking students to identify where in the poem it is necessary to pause and why, you might consider reminding them about line breaks, spacing, punctuation, rhythm, and emotion. In addition, when asking students to identify where in the poem to use a specific tone and why, you might consider pointing out specific emotional words, phrases, lines, and specific adjectives. The lesson ends with reading aloud the poem again, with necessary pausing and tone to produce overall sound. Lesson 2 continues with practicing the skill of reading aloud, and analysis is introduced. Students can understand poetry by applying a variety of strategies and appreciate poetry by listening to its rhyme, rhythm, and overall sound. Within Lesson 2, strategies to visualize and think about theme are applied. Ask students to visualize the images to clarify words and phrases. What do they see? In regards to the theme, remind students to think about what the poet is trying to help them understand. Does it connect to anything in their lives? What is a possible theme for all of us to learn? Lesson 3 is an extension of Lesson 2 skills. Students can understand poetry by applying a variety of strategies and appreciate poetry by listening to its rhyme, rhythm, and overall sound. Within Lesson 3, specific strategies are introduced, along with making inferences. Poetry reading strategies are easy for students to use as a step-by-step guide. Remind students to refer to dictionary.com and thesaurus.com when clarifying the meaning of words and for the audio tool to hear the pronunciation of words. Encourage students to write or highlight on the poem while using these strategies. Students will use their written notes or highlights to make inferences. In addition, drawing or adding a digital image for each inference will help students describe their thinking. Lesson 4 focuses on understanding the meaning of poems. Students can understand poetry by using annotation techniques. Within Lesson 4, identifying specific aspects inside a poem will lead students to overall meaning and theme as well. Encourage your students to annotate in a way that is easier for them, either by using colored pencils, shapes, arrows, or creating a key with digital colors and shapes. Maybe try digital annotation comments with Google Docs or Microsoft Word, or different colored digital text boxes using PDF tools. In Lesson 5, students will continue to annotate. Students can speak about poetry using annotation techniques. This lesson specifically focuses on annotating for sound devices and figurative language. you might consider assigning identification tasks to small groups and then discuss their findings as a class. An additional way to annotate is to have students all use the same code or formula of annotating, such as SLAM. Here, you can see how strategies and techniques have been included by using the SLAM formula. Students will become familiar with looking for structure, language, effect, and meaning. Lesson 6 brings all of the skills together. Students can interpret a poem's meaning and read aloud a poem with pausing and tone to show an understanding of the poem's meaning. Within Lesson 6, students will connect how strategies and techniques guide them to understand the meaning of a poem and lead them to more confidently reading aloud a poem. Students might ask themselves, how should I read aloud certain parts to best show the poem's meaning? How can I pause and use an appropriate and purposeful tone to show the poem's meaning? These specific strategies and annotation techniques will help students determine the overall sound and meaning of the poem. Finally, students can show their understanding of the poem's meaning by reading aloud with pausing and tone. You might consider having students record themselves or practice several times in small groups to provide feedback. As well, students can write, draw, and type notes on the poem to remind themselves of when to pause and how long to pause, or when to use tone, and what type of emotional tone to use. We hope that this video has provided you with ideas to use with your students. The full lessons are available on the ESU website. If you are interested, please join us for the following workshop sessions to collaborate, ask questions, and find solutions. We wish you the very best in promoting English, self-esteem, and confidence with your students.